Evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the second webinar in this exciting new series regarding IR practice types. This evening, we have two very accomplished guest speakers who have both successfully opened OBLs. So we have Dr. Constantino and Dr. Lipman. But before we get started, I really want to thank Subhash Gutti. He is a medical student at George Washington University in DC who has started this webinar series. Emily Sterbis, who's a PGY3 at Colorado, and Dr. V at Kaiser. So really, this practice types within IR is something that we have heard a lot about as early trainees, but we might not know specific information about it, which is kind of the reason that we wanted to start this webinar series, so that we could be more well-informed when we're making career decisions and not waiting until the very end of our training to start thinking about these things. So if this is something, if you're a listener and this is something that sparks your interest, or a listener that could potentially be a guest speaker, we would love to hear from you. And we wanted to provide our contact information. So if you are interested, you can go ahead and reach out to us and we can get you involved. So our first thing on the agenda for tonight, we're going to be doing speaker introductions. Followed by that, we're going to touch on a few different topics. So essentially, we're going to start off with a more broad topic, discussing the different types of practice settings in IR to give us a good overview of all of the practice types available. And then we're going to dive more into the details of the OBL settings as it directly relates to Dr. Constantino and Dr. Lipman, and focus more on building an outpatient practice. So we'll be able to touch on the legal considerations and financial considerations when deciding whether or not that's of interest to you. And then there should be a chat box. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, I'm going to keep an eye on the chat box. Feel free to type your questions in there. Either we'll get to it as we're going through the presentation, or we have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar where we will be able to address all these questions. Okay. So I'm going to hand the mic over to our guest speakers, and we'll hear from them a little bit on their background, their career paths to where they are now, and about their current practice setting. Okay, so we will start with Dr. Constantino.
Well, so what was it? How did I get here?
Yeah, just your background, a little bit about what drove you to do an outpatient practice and kind of the steps to.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that my career, I thought I would be a one job, probably academic. You know, I come from a family of scientists, no doctors, but scientists and lifers in jobs. And I never really thought there would be a lot of like twists and turns in my career, but that's not how it turned out. And I got interested in IR in 1999 in third or fourth year of med school, because I wanted to do a radiology rotation because I was really I was lazy, and I thought, yeah, this will be really easy. And there was a notoriously easy radiology rotation where you you go for like 2 hours, and then we went to the film library. So I thought it was great. And then I ran into Scott Goodwin doing fibroid embolization, and I did a little, research on fibroids, and I loved so many other things, surgery and emergency medicine. I mean, I just didn't know what to do, and I really loved IR. And so you never know what causes career changes. But then I was really determined to be in IR. And so I went to Stanford for internship, and then came up to Portland for Daughter Institute for residency. And I still was really obsessed with fibroid embolization, despite really trying to be into other things. because IR is not the easiest lifestyle. And, you know, everybody's like, why don't you go into other things? And I had to do this. So I then went and did a fellowship with Jim Spies, and that was really great. So I've really just followed interest, and I've just fallen into them by keeping my eyes and ears open. And you know, I think I work pretty hard and anything, and I'm always asking questions. And so I came back and I had a typical job with a diagnostic group, and I thought it was going to be the best job ever. You know, the salary was more money than I'd ever made, and it was, you know, 11 weeks vacation, and we're family friendly, and we're this and that. At the time, I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. I had a baby right before fellowship. And then I actually adopted a 3-year-old during fellowship. So I went into fellowship with a 4-month-old, and I came out with a 14-month-old and a 3-year-old, and did not know what I was doing. And so I thought I had this job like nailed, and I was super miserable right away. And I stayed for 2 years and learned a lot of things that I did not want. And then really just out of not being able to make anybody at this job, make this job work, I just decided I was going to go build a fibroid program on my own, and I didn't know how I was going to do it. But then there was an outpatient diagnostic imaging group who wanted me to start a vein center for them. So already this is like very non-traditional, but it was really started out of being in like utter despair and desperation with a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, a husband who traveled all the time, working 80-hour weeks on call, like literally every weekend for 2 years. And now I would never put up with that for like 5 seconds, but then I put up with it 2 years. So I didn't know what I was going to do, but I went and worked for this vein place, and they actually wanted me to work full time doing the full spectrum IR. And so then I just said okay, and then I just started building an outpatient center, and I didn't know what I was doing. There was not a lot on SIR. I just had to sort of figure it all out, and I just did it. And now that was 10 years ago. So about 2 years into it, I realized I would be successful, and I started thinking about an OBL, but I was an employee of the group. So that's then how I started thinking about OBLs. But it took me about 4 years to actually, because I was an employee and I was going to do it with them, and then they were partnered with a venture capital group, and there was a lot of business stuff that happened. But I finally made it about 3 years ago into an OBL, and it's been great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that journey. Dr. Lipman?
Well, I've been practicing here in Atlanta since 1991. I came right out of fellowship, did an IR fellowship at Yale, and came to Atlanta and started in a traditional radiology group. And most of the guys in the group were diagnostic, and I had just come from fellowship, and I was feeling really good about my training. And I trained with Bob White and Don Denny, and we had a full clinic, and so I wanted to bring the clinic model to this private practice group, and they were looking at me like I had 3 heads. And we see our patients like in the corridor outside the angio suite. They just couldn't understand the idea of a clinic. Nobody had clinics. And it's just what I wanted to do, and it became, this friction between the group that they didn't own anything. They had, and so this was overhead, and this was stuff that they didn't really want to do. But I prevailed after a long time. We started a clinic. At least they gave me clinic time, but they didn't value IR at all. So after I spent my afternoon in clinic, I had a nice pile of films waiting for me. When all my diagnostic colleagues had already left for the day, I had to sit there after I'd done a full clinic and saw all these patients, and then start reading my films that I was supposed to read, during my clinic. So eventually, I just told them that, I'm just going to go off on my own. And again, they thought I was they thought I was crazy. I mean, I was a full partner in a very successful private practice group. Like, where are you going to go? And I'm like, well, here, I'm just going to start my own practice. And again, this was at a time when not too many people were doing that. I mean, this was 2004. I decided to go, I was going to be a solo IR. And at the time, I was just going to just base it around fibroids. I really liked fibroid patients. And it was what I was interested in, what I was good at. And I decided that that's what I was going to do and started doing that. And then over time, it became clear that the professional income is not enough to really sustain the business model. And you really need to have access to technical revenue. And so that, kind of shift towards what I wanted to do. And I got a joint venture with a hospital to provide outpatient interventional services. So this hospital was a small hospital. They didn't have any IRs. They had diagnostic radiologists who all were afraid of needles, which was perfect. So they didn't have an angio lab at all. And so I joint ventured a lab with this hospital, who in itself was a joint venture between Emory and Adventist Health System. And so that was a great arrangement. And I would recommend anybody, that's probably the best arrangement outside of an OBL. The nice thing about having a joint venture is that our joint venture was, 50-50 between the hospital and myself. And the hospital billed and collected, and they paid the joint venture a fair market value for my IR services. And so it was really nice. You do the things, you got a fair market value. You didn't have to worry about billing and collecting, and you could be a doctor and, rented office space in the hospital, where the doctors out, next to the hospital had office space for physicians. It was a great setup. The problem was the hospital was a joint venture in and of itself, and the two partners just couldn't get along. And finally, they parted ways. And so when they announced they were parting ways, again, we always kind of thought we would be in our own place, but this really made it, we had to do it then. So 6.5 years ago, I opened the Atlanta Fibroid Center. It's an OBL practice, 5,400 square feet, equally divided between admin side and clinic side. I have a full angio suite, and it's not a C-arm, it's full angio, individually private recovery rooms, not this, corral with little thin sheets. Each patient has their own private room because we serve women, and women were we canvassed a number of women in groups, and privacy was a very important thing. Next to quality of service, it was privacy. So that was really important. We designed this state-of-the-art center around women and caring for women, because that's who we serve. And it's been tremendous. I'm a better husband, I'm a better friend, I'm a better physician. When you're doing things that you love to do, it's true, you're not going to work. I mean, it's truly a phenomenal place. I have the most pleasant employees. I mean, it's such a dichotomy versus the hospital. The hospital employees that I was working with, they were miserable. The docs were miserable. They were being beat on and making all these other, all these admin duties and scribes. And, if you come to visit at the Atlanta Fibroid Center, you'll see people that are smiling, they're happy, they love coming to work. There's no call, there's no nights, there's no weekends, no holidays. They spend time with their families. They're very happy, and that resonates throughout the center. And so the patients pick up on the fact that they're all like, they can't believe the experience. And that goes back to the referring physician, and it's this positive loop of just wonderment. I love going to work, and it's just a great place. And I wish I would have had the nerve to jump earlier, but I'm glad my colleagues wouldn't let me have a clinic, and gave me a lot of grief, because that really was the first impetus. And I just wish I would have done it 5 years earlier.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I think it's really important for us to not only hear about the different practices types in IR, but kind of what your journey was to get there. I think that's really meaningful to us as early trainees. We're going to move on to our first topic. So we don't have to talk about this in a lot of detail because we want to save some time for you guys to talk about OBLs and practice building. But I think it's important that we at least touch on this so that we can get the bigger picture of what our options are and what we can make of our career. So on this slide, we listed both hospital employment and private practice and the different practice types available within each. I think it goes without saying that the case load, the case type is going to differ in each of these environments. So the question that we have for you, Dr. Constantino and Dr. Lipman, is what are the major differences you've seen in each of these practice types that are available? And if you could just talk about the major differences you've seen in your work in them, kind of touching on the work hours, the call schedule, autonomy with making your schedule, and things like that.
Go ahead, Lipman.
I've probably practiced in every one of these except I've not been a hospital employee. I mean, I think, you know, the academic versus private is an important kind of distinction to kind of decide. Like, you have to kind of do, you know, some self-awareness. Like, what's your why? Like, you know, that I think Oprah talks about her why. Like, you got to figure out, like, do you want to teach and do research? Are you like, you know, is that your bend? Like, and that's great. If you want to teach residents and you're a teacher and you're great at it, or you want to do research, you've got, you know, then okay, the academic track is something that you know, obviously, you know, you're going to do. Now, you can do research, particularly clinical research, in a private practice setting, and but you know, I think you have to figure out that first, and then you know, for me, I don't care for the, you know, hospital practice with other radiologists. I mean, I guess I'm bitter from my one foray into that, because, as I say, there's usually a lot more of diagnostic than IRs. They don't value you, at least they didn't me back in the day. Maybe it's gotten better. You know, I haven't been in that setting in a while. Maybe they've come around to it. But I think that, you know, you really have to decide kind of, you know, what you want to do, and then, you know, be happy about it. You say there's a Japanese term called Ikigai, and it's really important to kind of figure out, like, that's the ultimate happiness. It's like if you have this Venn diagram with 4 circles in it, and they have intersecting circles, and it's the circles are what you love, what you're good at, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. And the intersection of all 4 of those is Ikigai. That's, you know, ultimate happiness. And so you got to have to figure out what that is. For me, it was fibroids. I mean, I didn't want to do dialysis work, but, you know, some people love dialysis. Some people like veins. Some people like PAD. Find out what you love to do. And as I say, you'll never work again. And you can do it. Like, everybody says, oh, you got to do everything. No, you don't. You don't. Some like that. Some like to dabble in everything, and that's fine. But whatever it is, find out, like, what you love and do that. Because once you're, like, for me, like, if I became a better dad, a better friend, a better husband, like, I was happier, clearly happier. I was miserable before. And that's why there's a lot of physician burnout, and you don't want physicians that burn out. You want happy physicians. Patients deserve happy physicians, and you deserve happiness. So whatever that is, it's going to be better for medicine. In fact, I think that's how we take medicine back from these huge hospital-owned practices. That's not medicine. We've got to, hopefully it's shifting the other way, and we're going to take medicine back and be a lot happier, and the patients will be a lot happier.
Yeah, those are some really great points. So when you worked in, so you've worked in a lot of these different settings. Can you talk a little bit about what your, so when you were working in the hospital setting, you pretty much did all cases, correct?
Right.
Okay. And
Yep.
so now, and now that you
kind of did what was on the board, like you come in, you'd see what's on the board, and you were a physician consultant. But now I care for patients. You know, I see them in the office. I'm their physician. It's not, you're not reliant on somebody else, you know, reliant on the vascular surgeon sending you somebody, reliant on somebody in the hospital sending you something. Patients are coming to see me. I'm their doctor. And so I'm not the physician's consultant. I'm the patient's consultant. I'm a real doctor now.
Sure. Okay. That's awesome. I mean, I feel like that is what we all aim for in our practice. And I think that's essentially where IR is heading, where it's becoming a more clinical specialty. That's awesome though. So what we can do next is we can dive deeper into talking more about IR in the outpatient setting, since this directly relates to both of your current practices. So can you guys talk a little bit about where your practice falls in relation to OBL versus ASC, ambulatory surgery center versus a hybrid, whether or not you do any work in the hospital anymore, or if it's pretty much just in your outpatient clinic, in kind of your group size, if it's a large group, small group, just kind of the more specifics on that stuff.
Now you're in very big groups. Large groups. No, I'm kidding. We're both solo.
No, we're two now.
Oh, you too? Okay, you got two.
We doubled.
Doubled. So
go ahead. You want to take that one?
And then I think some of these on the last slide, maybe you go back to the last slide for a second, but so ASC, OBL, ASC, and hybrid. We'll go to the OBL slide. I'll talk about these things. So this is going to change from when you guys get out, because all of this has to do with reimbursement, and I don't think you should worry too much about it. To me, right now, because it changes all the time. And so what this is about is there are certain procedures that have codes. It's all about how you can bill and where you can bill, and that changes constantly. So, and it changes year to year. And this is why you want to be involved with, at least at our stage, John and I, we want to be involved with societies and OEIS and SIR, and make sure that our voices are heard to say, like, you can do fibroid embolization as an outpatient. Otherwise, the government says you can't do this. There's a list of inpatient only codes. So this is incredibly complicated and complex, and I don't think anybody needs to worry about it, because even in my time, everybody was headed towards ASC, and now we're like, well, do you really need an ASC? And so there's some sex appeal to it where you're like, yeah, I'm building an ASC, but really, you don't really need one, and it's much more expensive to build. So I don't think you should worry. So the differences are that ASCs are more expensive. You have to have gases pumped in. You've got all these rules. They're mini hospitals, and OBLs are basically like a C-arm and a recovery bed. I mean, there are accredited centers, like we're accredited, and it's not quite that easy, but and it all is based around where codes are allowed to happen. And if you're multidisciplinary, so like you're going into business with vascular surgery or nephrology or cardiology, all of their codes are going to be happening in different places. So private practice clinics versus hospital and versus joint venture. This kind of goes back to your previous slide. I'll touch on that in a second. Solo, small group, large group. Solo is hard. I mean, John has done it successfully for a long time. Finding the right partner is very hard. Working alone is not something you want to come out of fellowship and do. I mean, I was probably 9-10 years out before I was like working really alone in a cath lab, and we have things go wrong, and they go wrong fast, and there's only like you around. So you don't ever, I would not recommend being in that position early on. I've got one or two friends who built cath labs pretty quickly after residency or fellowship, and they've done okay, but it's tough. So I think joining a group, large group, small group, you know, it's all about the people you work with. Pure VIR, I think combined is great, but I've always been like a fan of other fields. Having said that, I've never had to be in the cath lab with an IC or VS, and I don't know, people are always like, you're so fast, you're so good at getting into things, and I'm like, I'm not really that special. So I do wonder how different other fields are. I do know that IR is really good at catheter work and wire work and imaging, and so, you know, but finding the right, I have a vascular surgeon that I always have like my phone of friends, I call them, and I'm really impressed with some of the vascular surgeons in town. So I know that goes many ways. Okay, so but the private practice versus hospital versus joint venture. If you go back to the last slide, I just want to say about all of these things, you know, I know people now who have job offers in all of these, and I can tell you that I think it's all about where are you? So where are you living? How's your family? Are they happy? Do you have 3 kids and there's parents around or not? And it all fits into the equation. So it used to be like when we were coming out, it was your contracts were how much did you make and what was your vacation time? I think I think people have different expectations, and it all matters. So if somebody calls me and wants to know, you know, I have this job offer, what do you think? I'm starting off with like, where are you in life? Like if you want to eventually work part-time, you want to not take call, you want to do high-level cases, like it all matters. And so that's how you pick the difference, all these things, you know, and you may not really want to do research, but having a research day, an academic day, having fellows around may lighten your load a little bit. And I think it's all very local and very dependent on who your partners are. If you have bad partners, any single one of these is a nightmare. And if you have great partners, any single one of these will be okay. So there's no right answer. And really, it's all okay. And it usually starts with what part of the country do I want to live in? And then what's there? So if you want to live in the Pacific Northwest, we only have 2 universities. And so I think John is right, you know, like what makes you happy? I like being in a cath lab. I also love being in hospitals. Like when I go in a hospital, I love it, but I cannot deal with the noise of administration. That just drives me nuts. I'm so impatient. I am so impatient. I cannot deal with a meeting. You hear people say, oh, we started this initiative and it took us 4 years. And I'm like, 4 years? I could have done that in 20 seconds. So I just am incredibly impatient. So that's not going to work well for me. But some people like that. It's a nice, even, they're cool with a program taking 3 years, 4 years to build. So in private equity groups, even them, you know, like I don't, you kind of love it and hate it because it's where healthcare dollars go, which makes you kind of, you know, want to have a heart attack. On the other hand, if you want to be an outpatient, they sure do make administrative headaches going away. I mean, John and I both know we run our own businesses. We're entrepreneurs. Like we are doing a full second job in business, and that's not for everybody. So, and that is what an OBL is, and having your own practice, and it's payroll, and it's time off, and it's employment law, and it's negotiating for every single thing, and buying computers, and building buildings, and I mean, it's a, you know.
Yeah, I guess there's control. You know, it's a control issue. You know, if you give up control by being a hospital employee. I mean, you're subservient to somebody else, and the revenue that you generate is mostly going to somebody else, the hospital and the administrators. That just didn't seem right to me that, you know, the hospital administrators are just making boatloads of money off of physicians.
And they're making that money by being obstructionist to what you want to do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they don't understand.
And sign some form 20 minutes before and all that BS that we don't deal with.
So that, to me, that was, I wasn't going to go that route. Then private equity, we've had private equity look at our practice. But again, it's about, you know, when you've built what we've built and you take a lot of pride in what you've done, they, you know, throw money at it, and money's fine, but at the end of the day, you know, you've lost control of your baby. And, you know, they're just, what they want to do is they take your enterprise, they throw some money at you, they take your enterprise, and within a couple of years, they're going to flip it to somebody else. And the way they flip it in a couple of years is by, you know, letting some of your staff go and cutting corners and, you know, doing things that you would never do. And so again, you know, it boils down to a lot of, like, you have to really know yourself, know what you want to accomplish, and then go out and do it. But there's no, as Mary said, there's no one path. You just kind of create the path. These are all well and good, and any of them are fine, but you know, you have to understand where, like, it's all personal and it's all local. Like politics are local. This is all personal and local too. You have to really, you know, self-actualize, like, what, you know, what kind of person you are and what you want to accomplish. And these are some of the things on the menu, but you've got to pick the right one for you.
Yeah. I would also add in that if you don't know, then pick the job where you're working the hardest and doing the most cases, because it'll give you the most option later. So you may not know. I mean, when you're in the early career, you're just like, I mean, I'm very impressed that you guys are doing this. Like I said earlier, was just trying to, like, roll out of bed and find some scrubs to put on. But if you just go for the hardest jobs earliest, so the one that's going to make you able to do everything. If you don't know, like, volume cases, just be really, really good at what you do, because then you have all sorts of options later.
Absolutely, 100% spot on.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Then you know what you want after seeing a bunch of different things and experiencing a bunch of different cases. So going back to when you guys were setting up your practices, something more specific topic would be, how did you approach building it from the ground up as far as getting referrals and gaining patients and those things?
Well, building the place, I had fortunately, I stayed in the same city. I had built a practice with my original group. So I had a practice, and I carried that book of business, if you will, and all the relationships with doctors that I had made with that hospital. I just moved it across town, and so that was, fortunate. I didn't have to start from scratch. So that was kind of in place. And then as far as building our office-based lab, say the business acumen you kind of learn on the job. There wasn't any of these like you're doing, which is great. It's getting business knowledge. I would recommend getting the smartest team of people that you can find. I mean, when we did our OBL, I had a lawyer, I had a financial guy, I had a business guy, because I didn't know about these things. I mean, the first thing about, you have to know what the state regulations are. Every state is different when it comes to, doing these things. And so you have to know the state regs, and you've got to have legal and, say, financial. We bought a full angio suite, and we had a build out. So we bought our space, and we built it out. And so we had to have an architect and a builder and somebody that did medical office building. And so you have to have a team of people that you can, lean on, because you're the clinical medicine person, but at least from my standpoint, I didn't have any knowledge really about any of these other things. And so I relied on this team to help me. I told them what I wanted to accomplish, and, we got it done. And so you're going to have to, rely on other people and capital. So that's important, is to build your team.
That is another piece of advice I give people who ask, especially people one to like 3 years out when they want to open an OBL, is just start saving all of your money. Because as John says, I think we are giving this, unfair impression that we walk around. I mean, I can tell you, I did my afternoon case, I believe I lost a lot of money on. It's not all a win in the OBL world, because I opened a billion products and there's no hospital to absorb them. I pay for them, but I thought I needed to do it, so I just did it. But that's the mini version of the issue. The big version of the issue is that you do have to hire all these people. So when you're hiring the lawyers and hiring architects and buying buildings or leasing, all that costs money. And so, a lot of people get out of school, they've got a lot of student loans. And so this is a factor that comes into it. If you have $500,000 of student loans, you're going to want to take a job where you can pay those things off. And, and I know there's the loan forgiveness program. So maybe you're doing the loan forgiveness program. If you're headed towards OBL land, you're going to want to come into it with capital, meaning cash. If you don't have it, you can get it. Just like, it's just like buying a house. You usually put 20% down, and then the bank loans you the rest. The bank will loan you money when getting money is a hard part of building the lab. So if you're 10 years out and you have assets, you can go into a bank and get loans to do all this. But if you're fresh out and you have no track record and you have $400,000 of student loans, it's going to be harder. So right then and there, that answers the question of, what am I going to do about this? Well, if you don't have the capital to start one of these, then you're not going to be able to. Or what's going to happen is somebody's always going to want to make money off of you. So venture capitalists, there's lots of people who will be like, I'll build you one of these. Be very cautious of anybody who wants to build you something with you just be the doctor. Don't worry, because likely, they'll set up some deal with their 50-50 owner, and you'll think it's great because they're making something happen, but the deal won't be so good in the end. So I guess I'm saying save your money. Pay off your student loans, save your money. So that right there could buy you 5 years of a job at, maybe a hospital place or a private practice place or somewhere that's not an OBL.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. That's a really good point. Kind of more leaning in that direction. You guys touched a little bit on it, but more of the legal considerations when you're going into private practice. How did you guys approach, or do you have hospital privileges, and how would you approach a hospital contract in an OBL, or do you need one?
Yeah, this changes also all the time. So, this is something, we in Oregon, we have to have hospital privileges. It's state by state. So it may be totally irrelevant if you go to a state that doesn't need it, but most places, there's a lot of politics in this world, like a lot. It's all political. I've been in Oregon since 2001. John's been in Atlanta forever. Like, we're not mobile because we have our businesses here, and all politics are local. And how mean and aggressive people are going to be versus how welcoming, or it's going to depend on where you are and what you want to do. But so yes, we have hospital privileges. We do not need hospital contracts. So hospital privileges is just the medical staff office. So all you have to do is you have to get the hospital system to say, yes, we recognize that you're on the medical staff, and they're going to have criteria for that. And within one hospital system, let's say it's the Providence Hospital System in Oregon and Washington, Alaska, they have hospitals dotted all over. Your privileges are just at that hospital. And every hospital has different medical staff. So I could be on like 3 Providence hospitals. I have like 3 hospitals I'm on staff with, and I always want to stay ahead because you never know when, again, all politics, something may happen, some completely unrelated to radiology or IR, like some big ortho group partners with somebody, and then they are having some dealing with med staff, and they say you have to wipe out everybody on this panel except for us, or, you know, it's always random. So in order to stay ahead of the game, I always am thinking about what's my weakest point, like where are they going to get me? Where are they going to get me? And I'm always trying to out navigate. The exclusive contract is a big, big issue. And being in charge of the private practice world, I'm trying to change it. But it's not, you know, it is what it is. What this means is that the hospital down the street, the radiology group that's sitting in the hospital reading diagnostic imaging has said, I cannot do cases in their cath lab. Okay, so like I'm not interested in reading chest x-rays or CTs or any of that stuff, but somebody from the outside can't come in and do IR. Now the kicker is that if you are a cardiologist, a vascular surgeon, a nephrologist, you can go do cases in that cath lab. So this is very bad for interventional radiology because what it is, it's taking, UFEs won't be a good example because we're the only ones who do them, but let's say PAD, right? So I've got an arterial case and the patient's sick and I would like to take this patient to the hospital instead of my OBL. The radiology group sitting in the basement of that hospital has said that I cannot take that case there. However, if one of my partners is a cardiologist, they can go there, or a nephrologist. So we exclusivities say we're okay with a nephrologist doing a cath lab, doing a arterial case in our hospital. We're just not okay with another interventional radiologist. Yeah. And that is bad for our field.
It's a very contentious thing. I've been experiencing that for my whole career since I went solo, because everywhere in Atlanta they have these pseudo-exclusive contracts, and it's a really, it was born out of, it's fine for diagnostic radiology. For diagnostic radiologists, you don't want the GI guy reading, you know, abdominal CTs and the neurologist reading the brain MRIs and the chest guys reading the chest CT, and you wouldn't have anything left but barium. And so to have a cohesive radiology department for diagnostic radiology, exclusivity makes perfect sense. Yeah. Where it falls apart, it makes absolutely no sense, is for IR. IR is a clinical specialty. And as Mary said, we have our own patients that we'd like to bring to the hospital, and the hospital should welcome it. It's revenue for them. And you know, I have been blocked from doing cases at a hospital where there were no IRs on staff, but the diagnostic radiology group had exclusivity for all things that had radiology after their name. And so it makes no sense for IR to be included in that. It's its own clinical specialty, just like you have physicians that are employed by the hospital, like OBGYNs employed by the hospital, and you have private practice OBGYNs at that hospital. And you know, you decide who you want to use based on relationships and so forth. IR should be the same way. You have the IRs that are part of the hospital and their diagnostic group, and you have independent IRs like Mary and myself that should be able to do cases there. I mean, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but you know, it's the way it is. In fact, there's been a number of debates at SIR over this, and the people that have these pseudo-exclusive contracts say, well, you know, you would like to have it too. If you had it, we have it, and you don't, tough luck. And it's really, it only hurts other IRs, which is kind of crappy, as you know, only hurts your own brothers and sisters.
Well, and people like John and me, I'm not interested in sitting around in a hospital and doing hospital cases. So like, we're being blocked from a place that we don't actually want to go. It's like blocking me from McDonald's, like thanks, but I don't want to eat there anyway. You know, I'm not equating, hospitals are good places. I'm not saying they're all McDonald's, but like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to take call. I don't want to do work in a hospital. That's why I have an OBL. So, but there are times, you know, that really it's about being able to be like accredited center. So it's all about the paperwork, right? It's not that I actually want to roam the hospitals and try to dredge up some, like nephrostomy or filter, like if I'm at that level, I gotta worry about that referral pattern problem. So that's the irony of it. It's like, I never plan on stepping foot in here, but I need this box checked. And then let's say, so they're worried about slippery slope. So they say, okay, come on in, you can check this box. They're worried that, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to do that, but maybe the next guy will. And then all of a sudden there's competition. But as John and I both know, the professional fees for doing things in hospitals are tiny. So why would I want to go battle another IR for a professional fee in a hospital?
Right.
Like, if I'm gonna get paid professional fee in a hospital, then I want the ease of not having to worry about referrals and dredging up my own practice, like, to go along with it. Anyway, this is all stuff that will probably change, and not only that, with a direct pathway, y'all might be in a real different place, because at some point there is actually a white paper coming out in the ACR. We started a questionnaire about 4 years ago. Me and 3 other guys started a questionnaire in SIR Connect about exclusivities, and it turned into this full, like, real, it was basically academic medicine questionnaire through the ACR, and it had professional questionnaire, like everything. And so that's actually being published soon. Anyway, y'all probably don't have to worry about it too much.
Okay, I mean, that's all really great information for us to know. It kind of leads in, I mean, regardless of where it's going to be, it's good that we're aware of where it was, even if it does change. It kind of leads a little bit into the next topic, finances and private practice. Is there anything that medical students and residents that are early on in training can do to become more educated, or that you wish you would have done?
I think mentorship is really important, not only for clinical acumen, finding IRs that, doing electives in IR to get the most broadest training. Same with financial. In fact, I'm reading this book right now, I don't know if you can see it, Why Doctors Don't Get Rich. So hopefully there's some good financial nuggets in here. I wish they would have more business knowledge during medical school. I think it's really, in fact, I interview medical students here in Atlanta at Morehouse School of Medicine, and I've been talking to them about, improving the kind of financial business kind of acumen, because people come out with all sorts of debt, and they don't have the financial horsepower to know really how to make money work for them. Not all debt is bad. There's a financial learning curve that I wish I had more business acumen early on. It's stuff that you end up having to learn over time, and it sure would have been. Now there are more resources, online stuff and other places, but that we didn't have. But I would definitely encourage people that if you think you are going to go out on your own at some point, you definitely got to be able to tackle the finances, no doubt.
Yeah, I would say definitely what I said before is just pay off any debt. Well, not all, like it depends on what your rate is. When I left med school, the rate was at like 2.8%. But now I'm hearing about this like 10%, 8%, 5%. I mean, you got to get rid of that stuff. I worked in investment banking before I went into med school, and I actually was going to get my MBA at Anderson because I went to UCLA. And, I always think about that. I don't know what you think, John. I've always thought, should I go back and do this MBA thing? But honestly, I don't know if I have the patience for it. I think when you have that sort of inquisitive mind, it's kind of what makes this entrepreneurial stuff exciting. I mean, I know probably more about law and contracts, and I'm still learning, like finances, and I'm always learning. And you are surrounded by people who know more than you, like my bookkeeper teaches me things all the time. Human resources is another field that we don't bring up. Human resources is really complicated. Marketing is complicated too, but it's a little softer. You know, I'm in Portland, so we got Nike. So I got a lot of like friends who are creatives at Nike, and I'm like, what do? You show up and design stuff, and like, how do people value your job? And marketing to me is kind of like that. Like you sort of, you have metrics and whatnot, but those are other fields that we have to do. And the human resources is a really challenging one. How to hire somebody, and how to fire somebody, and how to look at a practice and know who fits where. And it is literally one of the most important things you can do, because the dynamic and the culture of your practice can really make the difference. And you got to know when to get rid of people, and how to motivate people. And that's a full-time job. I mean, you know, now there's a lot of platforms that can do, so like Gusto is what we use for payroll. Like you don't have to have a warm body do payroll. Like there's now, with this blow up of technology, there's a lot of things that run the rote, and that's very state dependent. Oregon's very employer friendly. So I have an employment attorney like on my beck and call all the time, which in other, like Texas, you probably don't need it. You can probably do whatever you want in Texas. Open a lab in Texas. Or Georgia. Georgia's probably pretty loose too, right, John? We're in the land of like the liberals, so we protect the employers and the tenants, and you know, it's a good thing.
That's a good point. So you guys, I know you talked about the importance of having resources within different parts of the company. Like you have your attorney. When you were opening up your OBL, did you have a business coach or any sort of financial advisor? I'm sure at some point.
Yeah, we not a coach per se, but you know, we had individuals that I would, you know, talk to about, you know, when things would come up, kind of bounce off other people. I would hire people for certain periods of time that had experience putting stuff together, either an OBL or an ASC, and so you could hire them as independent contractors for a certain rate a month, and you know, go through these things as they come up. And I would use that until I had my practice admin, and then when I hired a practice administrator, you know, we would go through that stuff, and you know, the areas that he or she was strong in, we would work together on that, and that there were other areas that we identified we needed. I mean, certainly legal, that's all, you know, you got to have legal help, you know, financial, obviously we talked about. I mean, so there's certain individuals that you're going to need to be part of your team. They don't have to work for you. I mean, as far as they're not your employee, but kind of as you need them, you kind of bring them in, and you might have to put somebody on a retainer for a bit. And so that's how you kind of see the different things that you need. And as far as employees, the employees are really, really important. And I read this book, and I can't think of the name of it now, but it was about this guy, Danny Meyer, that had all these different restaurants in New York City, and they were all super successful. And they, you know, it's so hard to get one hit on one restaurant, and he was hitting on, you know, 6 or 7. And I read his book, and it really was something. I mean, he hires people, and I stole it basically. This is how I hire people, based on hospitality quotient. It's the quotient. It's not IQ. It's not intellect. It's the measure of how much people enjoy pleasing other people. And that is so important because, again, as I mentioned earlier, you know, we hire for HQ, and I love going to work. I mean, it's such a great environment. We enjoy each other. We do stuff away from work. And it's this positivity is so important because, you know, you're at work a long time, obviously, and it's your, in some cases, this is your life's work, and you want to enjoy it, and you want to be the best physician you can be. You've got to surround yourself not only with smart people to advise you, but the people you're going to work with day to day have to kind of, share your mission, and whatever you're doing, the mission to help with fibroids or the mission to help with PAD or whatever you're doing. Your employees have to buy into your mission, and you got to take really good care of them. And it only makes you look, really good, and rubs off on patients who then, go to the referrers and say, wow, I haven't felt like this, other than the Four Seasons and the Ritz-Carlton. I've never had a healthcare experience that was so positive. I mean, so I would say those are, two really important things.
I should mention here that we're trying to put together a business meeting for with SIR, and I wanted to call it an entrepreneurial business meeting, but I think it got shortened to Business Institute. And it's supposed to be attached this year to SIR in Boston, assuming it happens. We've got a great panel of speakers, all non-doctors. So there's a lot on SIR that's kind of like us and John and me and, physicians doing things. But these are the people I use. So we have, or it's not just me coming up with this, it's a whole group of people. But we have like a real banker doing the banking talk and a real lawyer doing the legal talk. And so we'll see, this is still, it's 95% gonna happen, but it may be something interesting for people to go to, just because it's the stuff that I wish I had heard. And now when, I guess my attorney friend, when she heard that I was doing a talk on contracts, said, I can't believe you think you could do a talk on contracts. Do you think I would bother treating somebody's veins? I was like, all right, well, you have a point. So, it kind of changed my thinking on that. Like, why not deliver, like, instead of having people filter, like, through me to you, why don't I just bring them to you? So, keep an eye on that. And then once you get to hear, like, people like bankers and attorneys and human resources work, hear what they say, maybe you're gonna be more familiar with networking with them and knowing to reach out to certain types of people for your business. Anyway, stay tuned.
Yeah, that sounds super valuable. That's awesome. Last thing I want to touch on before we get to the Q&A, what do you wish you knew when you had started, when you were building a practice? There's a couple of questions listed here. We don't have to answer all of them, but any unforeseen costs, any big financial mistakes that could have been avoided. And then I know the last one is probably really tough because that's going to vary with each person. And but generally, is there like any sort of rule with how long it takes to build a successful practice, or things that you guys have experienced?
Wow. It certainly, it's going to take a while. It depends on, the situation. When I started, as I say, the OBL, I had already kind of a book of business, so it didn't take that long to get to the break-even point. Even though I must tell you, when I rented out a full angio suite, that was a big decision, that versus a C-arm, which was much less expensive and much easier to put in, didn't have all the shielding things that I had to do with a full angio suite. But I guess when I did that, when I leased my angio suite, I had to pay this 6-figure bond to the manufacturer, and the rep was telling me about this, and I was like, wow, that is a lot of money that I've got to come up with for this bond. Like, is this, because I'd never done this before, so I'd like, is this what you do for somebody who wants to, start their own OBL or do? It's like, oh no, so the hospital doesn't have this bond, right? I'm like, no, we don't do it for a hospital. I'm like, well, why are you doing it for me? It's like, well, we don't think you're going to be around for 6 months. And so, fortunately, I had the last laugh. That was over 6 years ago. and I know now I own my own equipment, but you know, you are a risk. You know, it was something that was not, you know, very popular and done very often, and people are going to look at that risk, and you may have to put up some capital to show them otherwise. But that was an unforeseen cost. Certainly, I didn't plan on that. Wasn't in the business plan to have a six-figure bond for my equipment. But most of the stuff we had figured out from a business plan. That's an important thing to do if you're going to set out on this journey. You've got to have a plan in place. You just can't kind of wing it. So you have a business plan, a pro forma. You know, you kind of have to do. We did a SWOT analysis. You know, what's your strengths, your weaknesses, what are the competition involved, and you know those sorts of things. So you have to be organized and have a plan. And you know, for me, it was I wanted to. If I'm going to bet on somebody, I'm going to bet on myself, and I felt pretty good about it. And fortunately, it worked out. And I would say it works out for anyone that you know really has the desire to get after it and do it. I mean, I don't know of many people that kind of crashed and burned at this, so that's good because I think the more people that do this, the more resources you have, and you know, people can pick up the phone and say, how would you do this and how would you do that? And you know, Mary and I have talked, and others. You know, we kind of pick each other's brains and ask questions, and you know, I think this is the way to hopefully more people will practice medicine.
Yeah, I would say that thinking again about the early career section or medical student group, one mistake that would be, and this isn't on there on your list, but I'm just going to tell you what I want to tell you anyway, is that be careful of wanting to go to an OBL and sign an agreement that you can't get out of, because you know, your value as like kind of a brand new person is to generate income for the center, which is fine, like, and it's good. And you know, people like John's taken a lot of risk, and I've taken a lot of risk, and you know, we have like paddled the Titanic across the Atlantic, and if somebody wants to jump on board when they can, you know, see New York, and is that where that's where the Titanic went or was headed. And so I guess the Titanic is a bad example. That sunk. I'm thinking, okay, like the Queen Mary, paddle across the Atlantic, but not sink. And somebody wants to jump on board at the last minute. So understandably, the people who have done all the work to get there want to have some income, passive income from people who come to work with them. And I think that's fair, but you don't want that to go on forever. And so I'm seeing that trend now with people kind of write out where they're going to jobs and thinking, oh, this will be the OBL, it'd be great, and not sort of in the traditional hospital practice, you know, you used to have this 1 year or 2 year to partnership. That's 1 year's early, I would say, for me to want to sign somebody up for a partner, because not really sure that I know if I even like you at that point. You know, you're still working out kinks at a year, and because there is a build up, there's a ramp up, and it will be very unfair to the new employee because you will not be able to ramp up quite as well at a year as you will at 2 or 3. So that's a complicated one that I don't know we have answers to yet. Like if somebody calls me and says I got offered this job in an OBL, if you're trying to put somebody there for a long term, how do people get fairly compensated, and what does that structure look like? That hasn't really been figured out like it's been figured out in hospital diagnostic groups, which is the traditional, here's your salary and it's 2 years to partnership, or I'm assuming that's still going on. So just know that that's the area you want to talk to people about and keep an eye on if you're going to want to go into an OBL. Beyond just starting one, because starting one is a big deal. Starting one is like huge. It's like, why would you build the Twin Towers? You know, God, wow, that was a bad analogy too. You don't want to build the Twin Towers. This bad case is sneaking up on me. I keep talking about failing entities. Why would you want to build something on your own when you could walk into one that's already been built and get like a sweet deal and be able to work with somebody you like? And so that's to be determined though, how that looks. So that's something I would keep an eye on if I were in your all's shoes.
I think that's very valuable for us to know early on, because we're not going to build an OBL right out of practice. We have to get a ton of experience. We need to see what we like first, but we might have that opportunity coming out of training. And so I think that's
have that opportunity coming out. Now, I would say 25% of you could have an opportunity in OBL, maybe. I don't know, John, if you think that's a little high, but enough and that's uncharted territory. So stay friends with your friends.
Okay, awesome. I mean, that was all really good information. So I know we're running a little bit over time, but we had a bunch of questions that people were asking throughout the session. Do you guys have a time for a couple of questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So first question, can you talk a little bit about the daunting aspect of the overhead required to build and develop an OBL? This seems like a major barrier to those early career IRs who don't have the experience, business savvy, or assets to make it happen.
Yes, and those people should not make it happen because you don't have experience, savvy, or money. But you can in the future, you just don't right now. And
I mean, for early on, you want to do, you're like in clinical mode. You want to be the best clinician that you can possibly be. And as Mary said earlier, have the breadth of IR, being able to hopefully have a really broad IR experience, and being able to then figure out from that at some point, maybe you don't, but at some point you then go in and focus on, okay, what really gets me out of bed every day? What juices me up? What do I really love to do? Because here's this broad, I mean, IR, let's face it, IR is the best specialty there is, bar none. It's the best medical specialty by far, and that's why it's so competitive. And then you decide, maybe you like this aspect of it, and so that after a while, you could consider, starting your own practice in that area. And that's another thing, when you're looking to do that, you want to be the go-to person. Like hopefully in Atlanta, I'm the go-to person for fibroids. I mean, that's what I want to be. I want, when somebody, is looking into fibroids in this area, I'm hoping they're, yes, I can't do every fibroid embolization, but I want to be thought of as the go-to guy in fibroids. And that's, you should try to think about that and try to be like the best, whatever that is in IR.
Yeah, absolutely. The next question that we have is a little bit more back to referrals. So do you see social media marketing right now as a base to get patients?
John is a master at that.
I would say yes.
What do you get from that? Does that work, Instagram?
Yeah.
I don't know if it works.
Yeah, I think again, marketing is, again, a little bit local. Print never did anything for me, ever. Radio was somewhat helpful here and there. Not so much recently, but in the past, before all these, social media platforms, radio was pretty strong, but now radio is pretty weak. People listen to Pandora and Spotify and have, podcasts, and, regular radio is kind of dead. And so things evolve over time, but yes, social media marketing is important. And in fact, I give a talk every year at OEIS on, you want to optimize, you want to have a website optimized for social media marketing. There's a whole talk on, organic search and pay-per-click and SEO, and it's really important stuff. And your generation is much more savvy than mine at that. So this will be right in your wheelhouse, if and when, you're going to start this.
It's particularly painful for me because it's not I'm like a pen and paper. I'm like 85 years old. but I have great people. I like sometimes the Instagram stuff, but like Twitter can stress me out looking at all those cases. And, you know, I do think that your generation will, like, it will be the only thing you need to do and you'll be great. But feel fortunate that you were raised in that era. I was not. I think I got my first cell phone when I was like a fellow or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a whole, and it's still evolving. There's so many platforms. And having
TikTok.
so many
So I go to like a soccer game and they're like the TikTok app, and I'm thinking, oh wait, am I supposed to be on TikTok marketing fibroids on TikTok? Like my kids.
I don't know about that, but
I know, but the
you want to be on Instagram. You want to be on YouTube. YouTube is the second biggest search engine. You want to be on YouTube. We have, if you go to Atlanta Fibroid Center, we have over 150 videos on fibroids and on UFE, and you know, it's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. That that kind of leads into another question. So I think this is specifically, someone was asking this question specifically about UFEs, but how many of your referrals are coming from gynecologists?
That also fluctuates, but a significant percentage do come from gynecologists. You know, being in a practice for so long, I mean, I've been practicing just over 30 years, and 25 of which, you know, doing fibroids. So a long time, a lot of relationships, you know, and so we have a number of gynecologists that refer UFEs to us now. It's actually a significant percentage. And it's because of the good relationships over time. In fact, you know, when I am a big referrer to gynecology, and so when you're referring patients to gynecologists, the whole dynamic changes, because you know, people are always asking, oh, you know, you're giving a talk to gynecology, you're going to wear a flak jacket, or, you know, do you ever, like, I can never get any patients from gynecologists. They're all thinking I'm taking from them. Well, you got to turn it on its head. If you refer patients, you know, the whole dynamic changes, and you do cases together. Like we do combined cases where I'll embolize the patient, and then 2 to 3 weeks later, they remove a fibroid that's in the cavity. And so we work together to solve, you know, some problems, and that builds, you know, confidence and collegiality. So yeah, the refers from gynecologists are actually, you know, pretty significant.
Absolutely.
If that also, that question is, do you need other specialties to build a practice? The answer is no, but it's easier if people send you stuff. But if that question is really like, how do you build your practice? Which way, like, should you be focusing your energies? We can build practice around in anything, right? Like John and I can build a practice in whatever field, we can look at a list of procedures and say, yes, we can build all these without any referring physicians, because we know how to build, direct referral practices. So bigger picture, prostates, ortho, GAE, the vein thing too, if you like to do that, you know, so that stuff is out, just floating. These patients are just sitting out there. PAD, even ulcers, wound care, like all that stuff is just sitting there waiting to be built. So I would extend that to other specialties and say, there's not a right answer on that. You can do it either way or both.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, that extends beyond UFEs for sure. Other question we had was, as an early IR, if your first job is not the best fit, how early is it to start looking for other jobs or move to another job? Does it make you an undesirable candidate for other jobs if you don't spend a minimum amount of time in one position?
Wow. It's tough, because it's like, you know, what is it about the practice that's not living up to your expectations? So, you know, I stayed with a group for years, not being happy. I kept giving it more time and kept banging on them to try to see things more my way. And eventually, you know, I just held my nose and jumped. But, you know, you have to kind of know yourself and why is it that it's not meeting your expectations? You know, you don't want to be in a toxic work environment. So it really depends on, like, is it something that you wish it were, you know, a little better, or, you know, it's not, there's never the perfect job right off the bat. I mean, you got to be pretty lucky to get the perfect job. I think you gain experience at different practices and different styles, and along the way, you kind of develop into whatever you're really interested in. You're not going to, as Mary said, you're not going to go to the OBL right out of fellowship. That would, I mean, so you're going to have to take a job somewhere first and kind of cut your teeth on something, and hopefully it's a very accommodating, you know, situation. If it's not, then you do have to look around and talk to other people, but it's really hard to answer that without knowing more, you know, more of the why. But you know, I would always give it time. I mean, but depends on the severity of what's not meeting your expectation.
I would say 2 years is the typical, like, that's sort of 2 years is like
minimum.
If you look, well, yeah, if you went, once you're like on year 7 or 8 and someone was at somewhere 3 months, I wouldn't think about it. But your first job, you want to you want to be there for a little bit if you can. Right? Would you say, John, like just a couple years, like one means things started going bad like on the first month.
Yeah.
2 years means things started going bad because you go in your first job, you're like super stoked to have a job, right? Everybody shows up excited, and it takes a little bit of time for the surprise, oh my God, this job is terrible, to set in, and that's usually around like month 5, 6. So you're already getting halfway through the first year in like a euphoria that's just all fake.
Every job has these little surprises. I mean, my surprise was that no one told me I had to do discograms at this practice, and that was like,
yeah.
was like, oh my gosh.
My surprise is I was on call all the time, and my other surprise was nobody ever told me I had to request my vacation. So even though I had like 12 weeks, I never could get vacation because everybody signed up through the summer, and they all sign up in advance. So like those are the things that don't make sense. Like they take so much time and energy to hire you. Why wouldn't they say, hey, Lynsey, you're starting in June. We're making the vacation schedule. Why don't you make sure you put your request in? And what happens is month after month after month goes by, and you're too afraid to ask, like, do I get a vacation ever? Because you feel like you just started a job and you like don't know that somebody, and that's a sign of bad practice, because it means nobody's looking out for you. Not one person has thought, we're bringing on a new IR, we want to make sure she gets her vacation. So yeah, like it's that kind of stuff that I can see these red flags where you shouldn't have to, and in other companies you wouldn't have that. If you went to work for a corporation, usually they have people who are looking out. It's just medicine in particular. Medicine's a weird field. Anyway, try to stick out 2 years, but don't torture yourself.
Okay. It's good advice. I think a good question to end on, there's a lot of questions in the chat. Unfortunately, we can't get to all of them, but I think a good one to end on is what kind of procedures are you guys doing outpatient currently, and what kind of procedures do you think will be amenable to outpatient based practices in the future?
What I do is women's health. That's kind of our niche. So obviously primarily fibroids, but conditions that are either seen exclusively in women, like fibroids or tubal infertility. We do fallopian work, or at least predominantly in women, like osteoporotic compression fractures, migraines, things of that nature. We could do veins. We did veins for a while. So things that kind of fit a female only, or at least female predominant state. That's what we do.
I have the two spectrums because I'm a fibroid gal like from the beginning, and now I actually like the other work that I do. I like the mix that I do now. I PAD, so a lot of limb salvage, so ulcers, diabetic foot ulcers. I do radial access, I do tibial access. I would be doing, so what else do I do? I did a filter the other day. I've done some cool fistulas, splenic aneurysms. I have this weird portal case where I'm going from like the left epigastric vein all the way through the liver down into the SMV and embolizing that. I'm going to be doing that probably here in a week or two. Let's see, I would do kyphoplasty. I just haven't built it. Like if somebody fell on my lap with a broken bone, if an old lady tripped in my office, I would do a kyphoplasty. But I think like PAE, oncology, those are all outpatient. You know, Y90 can be done. You know, biopsies, I did over 1,000 biopsies. Of course, the paras, thoras, all the dialysis work. Gosh, what else? I mean, you could do a GI bleed. You could do any sort of bleeding, anything. I mean, it's really just put a catheter in it and coil it. Like if somebody was sitting in my lobby with a GI bleed, it's just not, that's not where the patients go. In terms of like I don't know that I would do a TIPS as an outpatient. I mean, people do, and really, you know, the guys out in Florida do aortas. A lot of chronic total occlusions. I would be a little nervous about doing a CTO of an iliac for sure. I don't get that bold, you know, but there are people that do them. But I'm rightfully afraid of the like heavily calcified pelvic arteries, and I like to try to stay a little bit out of those. And you know, outpatient means we are just not attached to a hospital, so we can be open 24/7. So you can have 23-hour obs here. All you have to do is have 2 staff sit here. So it doesn't mean the doors close at 5 if you don't want them to close. So, you know, you have full capability to do kind of almost anything.
Yeah.
Probably not stroke, but.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I never really thought about that. You can technically, yeah, you can have them stay overnight.
Yeah, all you need is 2 people. So you get your nurse and then you hire an EMT to sit here and watch people. So that's what surgery centers do. A lot of surgery centers are now open 23 hours, so 23-hour obs. There's no admission. You can't have an inpatient, but it means, you know, you can recover people. You can do things that require a long recovery time if you wanted to. Sky's
awesome.
the limit.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Okay, well, it is, it's been an hour and a half. Is there any other major, you guys have touched on some great points already, but is there any last remarks or advice that you guys wanted to share?
Well, if there was anybody that had any questions, we could certainly give our emails and they could email us. Be happy to answer if there was other questions that people felt they couldn't get answered, or you know. So be happy to do that. Mine's my first name. Is it on there? It's not on there. It's john@atlii.com.
I can put that in the chat as well. I can put your, and also I can email y'all's emails out to all the attendees who registered tonight as well, if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah, definitely.
And enjoy the journey. I mean, it's say we're in the coolest specialty there is. You know, get as much clinical background and training as you can. Train at the best place with the busiest place that you can find, and then once you have all that knowledge, you're set up to do whatever you really want to do, and that's a great position to be in. And the more of these that are, you know, surviving gives us more choice, and the more choice you have, it's going to just be better for you guys coming after us. So it's great. Good luck to that, and I'm looking forward. We just hired a young associate, and I couldn't be happier about it. He's great, and I look forward to seeing a lot of people coming through the combined pathway now that are getting much more clinically savvy. That's really important. You don't need mammography skills, at least I don't, or nuclear medicine, but more clinical, surgical, and medical skills in your training is going to really help you, kind of be competitive, because it's a very competitive marketplace out there with lots of other interventional people that see IR as how great it is, and they want to participate too, even though they're not IRs. So you want to be, it's a competitive landscape, but if you're really well trained, you're going to do just fine. There's always room for somebody that's very good, no matter what the field is.
Awesome. Well, we want to genuinely thank you guys for joining us tonight. I mean, having two people that have done a very successful job in growing an OBL was just such good exposure for us to hear from you guys. I'll send out your emails. This webinar has been recorded. We will be posting it on the SIR RFS YouTube channel. And for those of you who tuned in tonight, thank you for joining us, and I hope everyone has a good evening.
Thanks. Appreciate the invite.